Should the energy companies attempting to deceive the public about the long-term impact of their forms of energy being used in terms of climate change, should they have to pay for what they've done? Well, some in government think that they should. There were comments recently by Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Now, back on Wednesday, she acknowledged that there have been discussions within the Department of Justice about possibly pursuing civil action against so-called climate change deniers. And she has other supporters, one being Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat, who said the similarities between the mischief of the tobacco industry pretending that the science of tobacco's dangers was unsettled and the fossil fuel industry pretending that the science of carbon emissions dangers is unsettled has been remarked on widely, particularly by those who study the climate denial apparatus that the fossil fuel industry has erected. Under President Clinton, the Department of Justice brought and won a civil RICO action against the tobacco industry for its fraud. Under President Obama, the Department of Justice has done nothing so far about the climate denial scheme. And we have a little bit more on that report that applies both to the tobacco company and also potentially to some sort of action against the energy companies. But in advance of that actually even happening, right now it's simply things that Sheldon Whitehouse has been talking about, that Loretta Lynch acknowledges the Department of Justice is talking about. Take a look at how the media, particularly in this case, Fox News, distorts and spins these conversations in video 7.
Some of the millions of people around the world who do not believe man is responsible for global warming could soon be facing more than just mockery from the left. President Obama's top lawyer admits the government is considering much more forceful action. Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen tonight on the growing campaign against politically incorrect thinking.
Testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee, Attorney General Loretta Lynch said Wednesday the Obama administration has directed federal law enforcement to investigate whether big oil companies and other so-called climate change deniers should face civil racketeering prosecution the same way the tobacco companies did under President Clinton when cigarette makers came under fire for issuing studies denying harmful effects from smoking.
Under President Obama, the Department of Justice has done nothing so far about the climate denial scheme.
We have received information about it and have referred it to the FBI to consider whether or not it meets the criteria for what we could take action on. I'm not aware of a civil referral at this time.
Some analysts expressed concern about the disclosure, and particularly with Lynch's language, specifically her statement that the probe was initiated with the intention of seeing whether action could be taken against the groups.
The Attorney General's use of the word could is very telling, because it's not as if they're going to analyze these issues on the merits and say, would we or should we do it? They're looking for a pretext. Could we go after them?
So in that, there's a little bit of truth.
There's room to stamp liar on his forehead. It's an indicator. It's an indicator of intelligent design. It's rare when a talking head pops up that you know before he speaks, like, oh, that guy's about to lie.
On face alone.
On face alone.
Yeah.
That guy's about to lie to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you heard a bit of the truth there, but you also saw that it was spun as politically incorrect thinking.
Apparently it's politically incorrect thinking to call out fake scientists that have been paid by the Koch brothers to publish so-called studies that deny that climate change either exists or deny that climate change is man-made. Climate change is man-made. There's absolutely no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Countries other than the United States have agreed that it's man-made. So the question is, are we going to do something about it, or are we going to continue to allow oil and coal companies to do whatever the hell they want with our environment because they stand to profit off of it? And I love that this is even being raised as an issue.
Yeah.
We need to go after the deniers. I think that it's very similar to the tobacco case. I love that this is being compared in the public now, and hopefully people are going to stand up and do something about this.
Yeah. We've been talking about it on the Turks for 12 years, drawing that same comparison. I mean, from one of the first stories Cenk and I ever did was because the tobacco thing worked so well. They paid 9 doctors, not to say that it doesn't cause cancer, just to say science is unsettled, it's unclear. And then you send a message to people in a far less sophisticated time with no social media and limited television for people just to go, oh man, nobody knows. You know the doctors, you know the scientists, they don't know. So.
One day they say it's bad for you, then they say coffee's good.
It's just like coffee's good, eggs, right? It feels good.
Yeah.
That feels good.
So, and you just run out the clock.
You run out the clock. And
unfortunately, this time we're running out the clock on our planet.
And each 6-month period, each year that you run out the clock, it's I don't know what the number is, but it's $1 billion. So if they can delay it 3 or 4 years, then there's huge incentive to do so. And it is precisely the same method. Just obfuscate the truth. You don't have to be on the other side. You just have to muddle it.
Yeah, and it works. It works perfectly. Look, yesterday during the Republican debate, Marco Rubio straight out denied that climate change is man-made. Straight out denied it. And so I tweeted about it because I found it outrageous, and you would assume that the majority of people would agree with you, that they would see your tweet and say, you know what, I denounce Marco Rubio because he's a moron.
And that's what happened.
And that's the exact opposite of what happened, of course. Like, I get a number of tweets from people who are like, well, there's no consensus on whether or not it's man-made. You're a fucking idiot, okay? There is a consensus. When the vast majority of scientists have agreed that it's man-made and we need to do something immediately before Miami's underwater, certainly in the next century, we need to do something about it. Stop being a fucking idiot.
Well, Marco Rubio both said that he doesn't believe it, and so he made 2 points. The first is that he doesn't believe it. The second proved that he does believe it, because he said, look, we could try to pass a law, but what's the point? We're the only ones who would abide by it. And in the meantime, India and China are going to be wrecking our climate with their emissions. So why should we bother? That point doesn't make any sense if you don't believe that.
So are we a superpower? Are we leaders in this world economy? Are we?
Hey, I'm not
supposed
Marco
to be,
Rubio.
Like, I know, but that's the thing. Like, they love to pound their chest and talk about how we're leaders, we're the best country. Well, then why don't we lead by example and do something about what we're doing to the environment?